good to see you. I like the Groundhog Day piece.
Right? Yeah. I mean,
We were talking about that at IAB ALM, right? And my point on that was like, everybody's pointing fingers at Google.
right.
Guess what? It's not their problem to solve. It's yours.
Right.
Other people got to figure
That's
this out.
true. That's true. And I think some of the dialogue in the session that I caught had a little bit of that too, which is, look, that it just is.
It
like
is.
privacy sandbox, cookie deprecation, get over it and move on. Like
Right.
we spend far too much time talking about that sort of thing.
Yep.
So we thought, look, the live auction at lunch went so well that that's why I brought David Ellison and Reed Raymond in the back of the room.
Yeah.
I thought we could maybe.
You should have been an auctioneer.
Right? Right?
My only hope is it goes for more than Seth Meyers implied yesterday at the NBCU upfront.
Ah, I see. Well, I mean, maybe that's exactly what's needed is a live auction. I don't know.
Yeah.
I could get my buddy Rich here. He and I could do a joint auction. So Paramount is a company with a tremendous amount of history. It's rife with lots of media brands that you all know. I got to meet the company when it was called Viacom. At the time, the lawyer for Viacom, Philippe Demans, subsequently became CEO. He was cajoling my client to try and get some money to fund the acquisition of Paramount. So yeah, I am old. This was 1994.
Yeah.
And we, fortunately, our client said no because that security got crushed in value. But he was a consummate deal maker, empire builder, names like CBS, Miramax, MTV, VH1, Nickelodeon, Showtime, Comedy Central, favorite of mine, BET, and Pluto. The list goes on. But let's talk about the current situation. I know you're probably not at liberty to talk about the company's trading, but it is going on while you're trying to do upfronts, while you're trying to run your business. Describe what it's like internally. How big of a distraction is it?
Well, look, we're coming off 2 weeks of upfront presentations that started, I guess now, 10 days ago. Actually 2 weeks ago. And, the day we walked in there in front of Publicis, Bob had just announced he was leaving the company. Not a perfect situation, right? And I was very...
Not unlike Linda Yaccarino last year.
Exactly. That's exactly right. I would say this is less distracting
Okay.
because the CEO is not involved in the trading of the upfront, okay? And what became super obvious once we got in that room was that people were very focused on what we had to say, how we could help them solve their problems, right? Their team wasn't changing. Whatever does happen, the asset base of this company is going to be in place for the short term.
Right.
We're talking about longer term moves. And it was actually, as I told somebody, it was quite refreshing to speak practically about business
Right.
in the wake in the wake of all the corporate news. So we feel really good about our story. We have a different approach to the upfront, which is we don't do one big event. Mm-hmm. We do individual events for each of the holding companies. The actual upfront week itself, which is happening this week, feels just increasingly anachronistic to me. There are very important discussions that need to happen. It's the equivalent of short form versus long form. We need to spend more time with our clients explaining what our capabilities are, going through the content slate, and hearing what they have to say and what they need. It serves as a much better pivot into a negotiation than a single big splashy PR event. And I'm happy to report that it was not derailed despite the drama of the backdrop.
Right. Well, I guess at the end of the day, preserving the value of the business is the most important thing for the corporate action and the bidding, and those companies are going to want to see that anyways. Let's talk about sort of the media industry and where it's evolved. We're sort of mid-process of media companies having to shift from the linear cable bundle to streaming, and as a result, one of the things we talked about this morning, seems like one of the hardest things to accomplish there is the fact that these companies that were largely B2B or wholesale businesses historically have now had to learn about direct-to-consumer and start marketing to directly to consumers for their streaming apps, which are largely not having the greatest time. I mean, they're getting traction. That's better than zero. But at the end of the day, the handoff from linear to streaming is a challenging one. Talk about how a company, a media company, a legacy traditional media company learns DTC.
So the business is fundamentally changing from something that was like singular in platform, sold on demo,
Yep.
measured by sample, right?
Yep.
This is the advertising business. Is now, multi-platform, sold on behavioral signals, measured by census largely, right? It's complex. And the kinds of capabilities that you need to transact in that type of environment bear no resemblance to that of 20 years ago. None, okay? And that's the thing that I always try to impress on people. We're an entirely different business. They talk about a transition, and the transition just means that a bit happens in year one and more happens in year two, and you add that up, and over a decade, you're entirely, the language has changed.
Right.
The notion of interoperability has changed. The advertising architecture and ad stacks have changed. The way that buyers value inventory has changed, okay? Think about an upfront 20 years ago. You walk into Carnegie Hall and you would see the Monday through Thursday prime lineups. That was the language of the upfront then. The upfront language now is about clean rooms,
Right.
It's about interoperability. It's about advanced audiences, right? It's about cross-platform frequency management. All of these things that are just more in a tradition of, let's say, a technical product rather than a show business product. And the kinds of skill sets that you need inside, and I'm talking about, inside of advertising, but this gets expressed across the organization totally, right? I mean, the market of Paramount Plus is not the same as the market of CBS. It's an entirely different set of skill sets, assets required, investments to make those things fly. And how does it work? I think that it's staged. In all cases, it's always, you're like outsourcing the expertise initially, and then slowly you begin to insource those things, and then it just becomes part of your product.
For the advanced technology side of the media business.
Yeah, the data scientists that you need,
Yep.
the data investments that you need, the tech stack that you need. You begin these journeys renting those things. And then over time, you absorb those things.
Well, in many ways, that was your purview in early days. You've been there for, what, 15?
Yeah, I started Viacom in
years?
07, yeah.
07, okay, so you've been there
17 years, almost.
17 years, and you were originally the tech data sort of...
Well, I was the chief operating officer of,
Right.
Of the sales group, yeah. So that was my purview.
But you've witnessed over that period of time the change in the organization from literally almost literally three martini.
Yeah, I didn't witness it. I did it.
You did.
yeah,
right.
It was and again, it's like you have to have commitment of resources and leadership to make these things happen. And some of us are on the other side of that in terms of understanding how it works and what we can offer, and some are still going through it.
How do you frame competition? Historically, it was always the big networks. You've got NBC, you've got Disney, Warner, not a network, but another major media company, Fox. How do you define your competition today? Because one of the things we talked about in the CTV section of our State of Digital was, these large tech giants, all of whom have discovered that live sports is the key to the linear bundle and are investing heavily. How do you define the playing field in terms of with whom you're competing against? This morning, Amazon had their
exactly,
front,
right.
Not a new front, an up front.
That's right, correct. And enormous investment in long-form programming, right?
Yep.
But I think there's two ways to think about it. One would be on format, right? Half hour, 1 hour, 2 hour, right? It's a different kind of engagement. It's what we talk about when we sell advertising. There is this kind of engagement and that kind of engagement. There are entrants here that are now selling advertising. If you think about the big streamers, 3 years ago, only half of them had ad-supported tiers. Now they all do, right? And so, you have to think about it very, very broadly. I think in the first case, you mentioned sports, right? There is no line. I don't think there's any line between what we're doing and what Netflix is doing. Mm-hmm. It is the same, and they are all direct competitors. I think what's interesting when you think about the advertising marketplace and the way dollars are allocated, if you think about the Magna share shift chart, I saw Brian Weiser in the room, and he was the pilot of that. Which is very instructive in terms of how brands think about investment lanes and why they invest in different formats. A lot of that is also collapsing in very interesting ways. Because through retail media now you have more data appended to premium video experiences, things like ROAS. You can understand return on ad spending in a premium video environment via Walmart Connect or Amazon or Kroger, Albertsons Media, all these kind of big data sets that we can append to household exposures. And there's now common denomination between premium video and some of these other performance-like mechanisms. Yep. And I think over time, you're not only going to see a blurring of the players in premium video, you're going to see a blurring of the budget line items, right. Shopper versus display versus premium video, because they're increasingly going to be driven around outcome metrics that are becoming more transparent against premium video buys.
Why would long-form format matter? Aren't you just sort of vying for the same attention of the same people? I mean, you've got TikTok and Reels and YouTube Shorts all vying for people's attention, which arguably is a zero-sum game with your premium content. Do you view them as your competition?
Well, I think an important thing is to look at the average duration of the ad exposure. Social media networks are predominantly, 1 second, 2 second, 3 second. Yep. Skip it, don't, there is nothing more premium than long form. Right. There's nothing more effective in terms of driving brand impact and perception, awareness, intent, okay? And that's a story. These things are not made the same necessarily because they don't create the same kind of attention around brand messaging.
One of your more, so I guess the answer is no. You're not necessarily competing because it's a different.
I'm not saying it's not possible.
Right.
I'm just saying that human behavior and the way the social products are set up creates a discrepancy in ad quality.
Yep. But 4 years ago, you acquired Pluto, a fast aggregator, and it seemed that it was. I remember it being thought of as controversial at the time, where you paid $300 and some odd million for a $60 million business.
Right.
That kind of went pretty well.
It did. Right. It did. So Pluto in 2018 did $60 million, in 2021 did $1 billion in advertising. Look, I think we saw something which was around, everything was SVOD. Everybody thought that the entire world was going on demand, everything. And we saw a product with frictionless, experience that took out the paradox of choice. And, the proof is in the pudding, right? I mean, we just, when you move that thing into broader distribution, people use it. By the way, the user profile on Pluto is not that much different than any premium SVOD service, right? It's younger, it's higher income, better educated.
And they're sitting through the ads.
The
linear ad experience.
Exactly, correct.
I found shocking. I guess they have a second screen.
Look, it's just, Tom always says this. It's like counter to what everybody thought, right? It's not what everyone else was thinking. But I think if you go through the experience of Pluto, you understand its appeal.
Right. You mentioned measurement necessarily needing to move to census and move to performance-based ROAS. But every major media company, Paramount included, renewed with Nielsen. So it's not like Nielsen's going away. Are we talking about alternative measurement capabilities that are additive to what you're currently doing with demos?
Yes, I mean, we say that we're moving to a multi-currency future. We're not moving to a future that excludes Nielsen, or where Nielsen's the only one, or where Nielsen is replaced. Nielsen's going to have a big data product. They're on the road right now. These other products, VideoAmp, ComScore, iSpot, all very compelling products. They do a couple of things very, very well. Number one, it's a unified sense of identity across convergent platforms, so they can understand reach and frequency at the level of the household,
right.
Very consolidated fashion, which allows us to better target. Okay, they're also very good at advanced segments, right? Behavioral intent-based segments, like activating those. So when you have a behavioral segment that is optimized against a unified system of identity, you see these like conversion rates that are many times what a Nielsen 18 to 49 guarantee will get you. These products just work better.
Right.
And it's why Nielsen has invested in their own version of this, Nielsen One, which is underway now. That's kind of measurement move number one. Different agencies have different preferences for the types of alternative currencies, new currencies they want to use. Some of them want to stay on Nielsen. That's fine. We can support any and all of them. The onus is on us to make sure our ad stack works for any of these things. And then in addition, as you said, part two of the measurement evolution is really outcome-based, the transparency around outcomes that are brought to bear through retail media, which is going to bring a lot of value to the product because it helps us describe how it works.
Right. So fascinated by this notion of, at these upfront meetings, you trading off the notions of Super Bowl advertising with clean rooms. I don't know how that goes over.
You don't ever have to combine those, fortunately.
You did mention one thing that as a consumer I know is vexing for my family, which is this paradox of choice. They spend more time selecting what to watch than actually watching it. I'm like, come on, folks.
It's a high-risk choice because you're committing yourself for a couple hours.
And it's consensus. Everyone's in it together. Everyone gets a vote and everyone gets a veto. So it's a bit of a problem. And actually, I think it's a potential opportunity for these OEMs, whether it's the dongle folks or the set manufacturers that have these sophisticated welcome screens or starting screens. It's sort of like the top of the waterfall where they actually get to help with discovery. Presumably, you partner with the Rokus of the world and the LGs with all of your choice.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that the state of discovery it might be the biggest challenge.
Right.
There's too much stuff.
From a consumer basis.
Yeah, from a consumer base. Yeah. And all of the horsepower they put against discovery, it's still kind of like, nah, Right. I mean, I look at my Netflix recommendation, like, I don't know. I've already watched like half of it. It's kind of not that great, and there still is I think we are, as humans, still like very dependent on the tastes of people that we trust. Yeah. There's still like water cooler discussion, right?
Sure, we just had an influencer session talking about
Yeah, there you go.
That. Yeah,
exactly. Right.
Well, it sounds like you guys have you're living this transition from media to now you have to be a bit of a hybrid. I do think DTC is going to be challenging. It'll be interesting to see what consolidations happen out of sort of necessity of the business model. But whether it's with the current folks around the table now or some point in the future, I gotta imagine at some point you come back, either the name will change or you'll be under different ownership. And I wish you good luck with that.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, John.
Appreciate it. Thank you.